The Last Battle Won by C.L. Brasch. Covenant College sits astride Lookout Mountain, Georgia, like a grand lady from a bygone era. For many years, it was known as the Castle in the Clouds. The view from the former resort's spacious green lawn is breathtaking at any time of the year, but it becomes magical in the autumn. Brilliant orange and red maples interrupt the evergreen forests, and the scenery is best enjoyed with a steaming cup of hot chocolate in hand. Davy fell in love with that scenery in the fall of 1973. School in Charlotte was on fall break, and it was the perfect time to travel to Lookout Mountain. Davy's school paper editor had recommended an autumn writer's workshop at Covenant College, and Davy eagerly followed through. The editor was happy at the prospect of improving Davy's writing, and Davy was happy to take his 1967 Pontiac GTO on its first trip outside Charlotte. Davy's GTO, gas, tires, and oil, ran like a scalded cat, but it did not pass many gas stations. At 34 cents a gallon, gas was dear, so Davy had worked all summer to earn money for trip gas and boarding at the workshop. As he pulled into the college's parking lot on a Friday afternoon in late October, his fuel gauge was low again, but he did not mind. He was too busy enjoying the brilliant blue sky and the mountaintop's vivid fall colors. The writer's workshop would not start until Monday, so Davy had all weekend to enjoy the college and the surrounding mountains. A sign in the parking lot welcomed workshop members and directed them into Carter Hall to register. As Davy entered the great Gothic hall, a large fireplace and its ample hearth drew his attention. The fire crackled and hissed and warmed his hands, cold from the long journey from Charlotte. Davy signed in at the registration desk near the fire, and then he caught the welcoming smell of hot chocolate wafting through the air. Being hopelessly addicted to chocolate, Davy left the fire and he followed his nose. The enticing aroma came from a clean, well-lighted area with an old-fashioned soda fountain and several bar stools. A bouncy, brown-eyed brunette smiled from behind the bar and beckoned to Davy. "Hi, welcome to the Blink. I'm Nancy Moira, class of 1977. What can I serve you, Goldilocks with glasses?" Davy blushed. He looked a sight, having driven all the way from Charlotte with his windows rolled down. His hair was a boiling froth of blonde curls in serious need of a comb. "Hi, I'm Davy from Charlotte, class of 1978. I apologize, my hair must be a wreck. I smelled your hot chocolate and I did not even think of how I must look." "For real? Hey, that's a nice compliment on my hot chocolate. Pull up a stool. How would you like some hot cocoa with a double chocolate shake chaser?" Davy sat down and looked bemused. "Gosh, what is a double chocolate shake chaser, ma'am?" Nancy leaned over the counter to check out Davy's deep blue eyes. "Well, it is my specialty. Instead of that nasty old ice cream base, I use real chocolate ice cream, chocolate syrup, and fresh cream to hand spin my shakes. Are you game?" Davy smiled. "Sure, that sounds great. Thanks. Coming up, customer of mine. Hey, did you just come off the farm? I'm flirting with you just in case you didn't know." Davy's face turned crimson. "Oh, gee, I didn't know. I'm sorry. I was just thinking of a girl I knew from a long time ago who would really love this place." Nancy served up a fragrant hot cocoa and a double chocolate shake in no time. "Well, Methuselah, you could have fooled me. A long time ago? I had you pegged at no older than 17, even with that blonde mustache." Davy stroked his mustache and grinned in spite of himself. "I just turned 17, and it's a little complicated." "It always is when a girl's involved. Have a slug from the mug and lay it on me, kid." Davy liked this girl. She was good for his soul. He enjoyed the rich cocoa. "I met her down in the country quite a few years ago. She was from Ireland, I think, and she was full of vim and vigor. But I only knew her for one day. A good day at that. I haven't been able to find her since, and believe me, I have looked." That is a tough one, sugar, but you haven't looked around here." Davy cocked an eyebrow as he took a long slurp from the heavenly shake. "Well, that is true. I haven't looked around here." Nancy smiled. "Then you're in luck. Lookout Mountain is covered in hiking trails and honeycombed with caves that haven't even been explored yet. This mountain has more caves than it has rocks. The other side of the mountain even has an old railroad bed from Mr. Lincoln's War. Davy warmed to her idea. A nice autumn hike would be a lot of fun. Is there any trail that you could recommend to get to that railroad bed? There is. Just go out of the parking lot, follow the signs to Lula Lake Road, and walk until you see a dirt road on the left. Take that road down to the creek and cross the creek before the rapids start. You'll find a honey of a trail on the far side of that creek. It'll take you to the old railroad. Swell. Thanks, Nancy. I'll turn in early tonight so that I can get cracking in the morning at first light. Hey, which room did the registration desk give you to bunk up? Davy pointed to the far end of the castle-like structure. They said I'm in the honeymoon suite, where according to legend, Liz Taylor and Eddie Fisher spent the night back in 1959. Now, Nancy uncharacteristically blushed just a bit. If you're afraid of the dark, I can bring you a hot cocoa tonight. The shot flew clear over Davy's head as he stood up. No thanks. I brought a flashlight. But if you're open tomorrow evening, I may wrap up my hike with a double chocolate shake at the Blink. Nancy smiled deeply. It's a date. I'll be here, Goldilocks, waiting with a shake. Hey, by the way, did you ever bring flowers to that girl? Davy turned around before he walked out of the Blink. I did. I took her a red rose, and she gave me a really fragrant Confederate rose in return. Nancy rolled her head back and laughed. Go get some sleep, silly. A Confederate rose is a hibiscus, and it can't have a fragrance. Davy slept soundly that night, even without a hot cocoa from Nancy. He awoke before dawn, showered, dressed in jeans, and set out for Lula Lake Road. Being a good but clueless soul, he brought no map, no first aid kit, no water, no food, and no comb. After a few minutes of frosty autumn breathing, Davy saw Lula Lake Road wind closer to the creek on his left. He spotted the dirt road and took it to the creek bank. The water was flowing at a brisk pace, but he could ford the stream there before it dropped precipitously toward Chattanooga. On the other side, Nancy had been right. Davy did spot an old hiking trail. As the morning sun rose higher and the night's frost melted, Davy followed the trail down the far side creek bank with Lookout Mountain to his left and Chattanooga several miles to his front. Missionary Ridge was far to his right. He saw no signs of human activity. After a couple miles in the warming sun, Davy started to think perhaps a canteen of cool water would have been a good idea. About the time Davy wondered why he brought along blue jeans instead of walking shorts, he came across a tall waterfall. The roar was deafening, and the water's mist splashed rainbows in the air. The waterfall was actually several yards off the rustic trail, but Davy wanted to cool off in its mists. As he let the water droplets cover and cool him, he spotted a ghostly outline in the waterfall's curtain. Ever the curious one, Davy penetrated the hard water curtain to investigate what lay behind. His nose drew up. Davy smelled an astringent solvent similar to the acetone he and his dad had used to clean the hydraulic lifters in his GTO just before he had left Charlotte. Davy stepped out of the waterfall to the other side. He was standing in a firelit cave filled with coiled copper tubing, firewood, potatoes, and glass collection vessels. Davy's blood curdled. Even at 17, he knew it was a moonshine still. The waterfall helped to dampen the smells, and the cave helped to hide the still from prying eyes like his. Davy turned on his heel and entered the waterfall from the backside. Thoroughly doused, he re-entered the world of the sun and looked all around. He saw no one, but he knew that coming across a southern moonshiner's still was a surefire way to leave the land of the living. It was time to make tracks. Figuring that perhaps the moonshiners had gone down the mountain the previous night to drive a fresh batch down to Atlanta, Davy headed deeper along the trail toward Chattanooga. He did not want to backtrack and run into the moonshiners at the creek's head that he had forded earlier. Looking at his watch, he timed about an hour along the path to put a mile or so between him and the still. The creek was still to his left, but it was now silent, hundreds of feet below him at the bottom of a sloping ravine of broken gravel. Before Davy took another step, his head recoiled sharply and nearly snapped off. Something invisible had thumped his chest so hard he fell to his knees in breathless pain. Some of the pain was coming from a crease across his forehead, and blood was flowing into his eyes. He had been shot. At the same time, he heard the delayed loud report from a rifle. It had come from the opposite side of the creek bank, now about 500 yards to his left. Davy saw 3 bearded men there, moonshiners all, and they were armed with hunting rifles. The rifles were pointed at him. A branch above his head snapped off as a bullet whined by. Another rifle crack quickly followed. Davy was in a turkey chute, and he was the turkey. He looked up to the sky and uttered a prayer of thanks. "Angelos, I owe you a big one. My head would be splattered all over this mount if you had not just stopped me cold." Angelos was Davy's guardian angel. Most children outgrow the need for a guardian angel by age 10, but not Davy. He was a special case, and Angelos was a special angel. If truth be told, he had grown rather fond of Davy after pulling his fat out of the fire for nearly 17 years. Davy did owe him. Davy was completely exposed to the moonshiners' rifles. Sooner rather than later, they would find their mark. Instinctively, Davy barrel rolled like a log to his right off the dusty trail. This trick had always worked well in wrestling bouts with his older brother, Chaz. Perhaps it could save his life now. Quickly, Davy discovered he was rolling down a steep hill of some type. He became dizzier as he rolled faster. By the time he finally reached the bottom, he was covered with Georgia red dirt and old leaves from head to toe. He was completely unrecognizable. Shaking the cobwebs out of his head, Davy stood to his feet and looked around. He hadn't rolled down a hill at all. He had fallen into a deep caldera filled with sunsplash hardwoods, layers of leaves, and cool, still air. He didn't recognize the variety of tree, but somehow the trees did look familiar. Now how could that be, he wondered. Davy glanced down at his watch, but it had stopped at noon. He snorted in disgust and stuck his watch in his jeans pocket. Davy looked up at the huge caldera's rim. It was nearly 100 feet above him. There was no way in, and there was no way out. Davy whistled softly and shook his head. "Angelos, if you're going to put in an appearance, now would be a very good time. I'll need a set of wings to get out of this place." But if Angelos was close by, he was running silent. Davy sniffed. "I must be punch drunk. I could swear I smell hot coffee." "Hey!" A young voice rang out. "Hey!" At the far end of the caldera, Davy saw a small fire and a young fellow attending it. The voice called out again. "Hey! Come on over. I won't hurt you, honest." The young man did not look to be a moonshiner, so Davy jogged through the leaves toward the inviting smell. As he drew closer, he could see a fire and a red-haired young man resting on a rock. The dark outline of a cave entrance framed the scene. "Pull up a seat. I just put on some fresh coffee if you'd like a cup." Still damp from the waterfall, Davy sat down on a large rock and warmed himself by the fire. "Wow, thanks. I could really use a hot cup of coffee. I just went through a round of target practice, and I was the target." "Yeah, I see that dry blood on your forehead and your fresh coat of dirt. You're right lucky, friend. Try some coffee to cure what ails you. It's the last bit that my family gave me before the war." Davy poured some coffee from a dark pot resting over the fire. The 9-year Vietnam War had finally ended in January of 1973. This was going to be some bitter coffee, Davy thought. Drawing a sip, Davy raised his eyebrows. "Hey, this coffee is really smooth. I'm impressed." The young fellow beamed a proud smile. "That's real coffee. No red beet substitute for my family. My pa packed it for me the day I left home to sign up." Davy looked over his host closely. He appeared to be in uniform, but it was so old and threadbare, the livery was beyond recognition. The young lad's skin tone appeared almost sallow, but his facial features were disconcertingly familiar. Davy reached out a hand and smiled warmly. "Hi, I'm Davy from Charlotte, and I thank you for this coffee." Davy's pale host remained sitting, almost prone, and he extended his left hand. His right arm was motionless in a makeshift sling caked with dried blood. "Hi, I'm pleased to make your acquaintance. No one in the Sixth can spell my Christian name, so they all just call me Jeff from Union County. I've been praying hard for days that someone would come along and set a spell with me." Davy looked up at the formidable caldera walls. "Well, Jeff, you pray a good prayer. You're sealed in here pretty good. Just finding you would be a real task. Hey, was that the 6th Infantry Regiment from Burlington, North Carolina?" "It was. Do you know the outfit?" Davy knew the 6th from his North Carolina history class. They fought with distinction during the 1968 Tet Offensive, but the 6th had formed much earlier in May of 1861, as the war between the states broke out and split North Carolina's families apart. Davy's heart beat a few beats faster as he did his calendar math. Jeff didn't look like a Confederate reenactor, and he didn't look any older than 20. Angelos was up to something, Davy thought. He was calling in a life debt. Davy gently probed for answers. "I've read about the 6th. It's a proud unit. But how did you get separated from them and fall into this place, Jeff?" Jeff scratched his head with his good arm and shook his head. "I don't rightly know, Davy. We were pushing the Federals toward Missionary Ridge, and they were pushing us back, hard. There was yelling and screaming and shooting and dying all around me. I honestly thought I was done for. All I could think about was home." Jeff adjusted his bloodied sling. It was no longer dry. "I must have taken a ball in my right arm and passed out, Davy. I came to by this cave and fire with all my gear, but I can't tell you how I got here. I can tell you I'm powerful glad you came along." Davy grinned wryly as he sipped his coffee and spotted a pearly white feather near the fire. His heart and his head were struggling mightily over Jeff's true identity. Seeing the fresh blood on Jeff's sling, Davy's head issued an immediate surrender. "I'll bet a nickel to a donut I have a good hunch how you got here. That really doesn't matter at this point. The real question is how can we get you out of here to have that arm taken care of?" Jeff coughed and then chuckled. "Davy, my right arm is no good, and I can't feel anything in my left arm. Right now I can't even stand up or see real clear. It took everything I had just to stumble around and make this last pot of hot coffee." Jeff grinned sheepishly. "If truth be told, Davy, I was praying to the good Lord up above that someone would smell my real coffee and come set a spell with me. I need a favor, Davy." Davy cast a glance to the red trickle running freely down the back of Jeff's gnarled right hand. "Sure, Jeff. I'd be honored to do you a favor. You just name it." Jeff struggled to reach into his wool trousers pocket and coughed again. "Sissy gave this to me the day I left to join up, Davy. I promised her faithfully I'd bring it back to her. You make it back to North Carolina. Could you take it to her, please? I just don't want her wondering about me, not knowing. I've seen so many letters in my outfit addressed to troopers who have already gone on to glory." Jeff handed a small weathered object to Davy. It was a cork bottle cap from a soda pop. Davy drew it close to his nose and sniffed it. It had a faintly sweet smell to it. Davy smiled from his heart as a mist of time cleared for him. "It smells like sarsaparilla, Jeff." "You've got a keen nose, Davy. It's sarsaparilla pop that Sissy used to make for Pa and me. He has a terrible sweet tooth, and Ma was always getting on him for it." Jeff's voice quivered slightly as he sat on a bed of dry leaves. "Davy, I gotta be honest with you. I can't think straight. My mind has been going in and out these past few days. I can't remember Sissy's proper Christian name. I can't even recall my puppy dog's name. All I can recollect clearly is all the dying and the killing since I left home. My pa says killing is wrong, no matter what. I told him God was on our side, but I just don't know anymore." Davy sat on the leaves beside Jeff and smiled softly. "God's on his side, Jeff. He does what's right, and you did what you thought was right." Davy gently rolled the cork cap along his fingers. "Your Sissy's name is Miss Irwin, Jeff. She lives past the deep woods in the far back of Emmeline Mack's house. Emmeline and I are family. I'll make sure that Miss Irwin gets your bottle cap, I promise you. Jeff's last color left him as he laid his head on a pillow of fallen chestnut leaves. He tried blindly to find Davy's hand with his left arm. Davy grasped his hand firmly. "Thanks, Davy. You're heaven sent for sure." From somewhere across time, Davy felt an eternally young puppy lick his nose and an eternally lovely lass kiss his cheek warmly. And then, Trooper Jeff went home. Davy's right hand hung motionless in the air where Jeff had been an instant before. A single pink rose petal fluttered softly to the ground. Davy tried to focus his eyes on it as the cork cap disappeared from his left hand and the fire went out. He spoke in a whisper to no one in particular. "They say that the Confederate rose isn't really a rose at all, that it can't have a fragrance." Angelos materialized beside his friend with his wings tucked in. He took hold of Davy's trembling right hand. "They're wrong, Davy. It can, and it does. Come along with me. I've just developed a sudden fondness for brown-eyed girls and double chocolate shakes." The end.